Okay, we can start. It's time. So, I'm actually one of those people who is using Guix in a production environment. The website is called gnetwork.org. It's hosted by University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis. And this is a site that has been developed over the last 20 years. Yeah, so even though it's in essentially a simple setup, we're running Python and MySQL to offer these services. I'm going to explain to you, how it got out of hand a bit. Anyway, what is Guix to me? It's all about sleeping at night. Yeah, I mean, the last 20 years I've been managing systems, and sometimes running 40 servers or something in that order. And you would get a call in the middle of the night, and somebody says, hey, you gotta run to the data center. That's something I really want to avoid. I could have somebody else go now, I think, but even so, we are doing better. So it's about controlled software deployment, and it's about controlling the full dependency graph, and I'll explain that in a bit. And also, what you want to do is, as Ludo so nicely pointed out, is you want your system to be deterministic. Once you deploy it, you want to really know it's the one that you actually deployed. No, sorry. So I'm going to talk about 4 things. One is deployment in a developing, testing, staging, and production environment. The second point I want to discuss is easy installation, and I'll get to, that will be the longest point. Distributed workflows I'll discuss shortly, and then orchestration of services is something we could see as a next step. So when you talk about deployment, generic is essentially simple, but it's all about dependencies, and there's a link here at the bottom. This slide you can find online, and I'm gonna educate you a little bit what it looks like. So this is a graph that has been produced by Guix. When you put all the dependencies together, it can show you an SVG, and I hope I can scroll it. Yeah. So somewhere at the top, there's GNetwork, right? So this is actually the starting point. So GNetwork depends on quite a few things. Now let's go sideways, see what's here. So there's Redis, okay. And there's RQTL, which is an R library. There's Python parallel in there. Sorry for the. Okay, so here are some of the R packages, many of which Ricardo has packaged. Yeah, so it continues for a bit. And then let's see, there's also somewhere. How to config, so fonts, cups is even there, God knows why. So this is the glibc stuff, and then we're getting in XML parsing, we're getting into fonts, the some X stuff somehow. So how is this all possible? Let's see what's here. I'm missing out on the Python stuff because it's also quite huge. Anyway, LZ4 is there, Valgrind is even there, glibc is fortunately there, or it's glib. Anyway, so to build a system deterministically, you have the immediate dependencies, which are quite obvious. Yeah, so maybe you're using SciPy, or RQTL, which depends on a few other R packages. But you also, to get to this environment to deploy it, these packages have their own dependencies. Yeah, so when I showed this to my professor, he said, "How come Ruby's in there?" Yeah, it's not supposed to be any Ruby in there. Yeah, but there's a dependency on Ruby somewhere. One of these packages requires Ruby. Yeah, so this is the stuff we're finding out. And the versioning is extremely important, right? I mean, when you want to have something deterministic, you don't want to, to be building on shifting sand. Yeah, so we have actually, one thing I didn't show you, but there are 3 Pythons in there. There's Python 2.4, Python 2.7, and Python 3. 3, I think, or 3.1, wherever they are. Yeah, so there are packages also depending on different Pythons. Yeah, so let's go back to the slides. Yeah, so essentially what is simple is actually not so simple. Yeah, and there's also dependencies for OpenBlast and Atlas, which are kind of competing libraries. And then there's the Ruby dependency, and the number of dependencies is actually growing over time. Yeah, anytime you add a package, you'll get more dependencies in. And I've so far avoided doing the JavaScript stuff. Because the JavaScript we're loading ad hoc now, which NPM is actually great at. Yeah, the Node Package Manager, but it's such a mess, it's unbelievable. How am I doing for time? So, also in development, the developers were using different systems essentially, right? I mean, they were doing it ad hoc. So you say, okay, I want Python, so you install Python. Yeah, you want to install SciPy, you will get a version of SciPy. Yeah, and you know, this raises real questions for, you know, if you find a bug, is it actually, you know, inside the code base itself, or is it inside the, you know, the underlying dependencies? There's not a chance of reproducing these, yeah, unless you work on exactly the same machine. So you know, a year ago, heroically, I started packaging this stuff in GNU Guix. And basically, essentially, what I did is I took a checkout of Guix itself. Yeah, so I started from the trunk of Guix and start building it from there. Yeah, this means that you know, at that point in time, I sort of fixated the environment, right? So I was using exactly that version of Python, yeah, that was in Guix. The problem with Guix is that if you keep updating the Git tree of Guix itself, these packages change also, right? So over time you'll be hitting issues with dependencies that are not working anymore. So I fixated it in February, and next to that I was using the Guix package path. So I put in my own packages, right, or our own packages. And in this repository, the link is here. There are now some 100+ packages. And some of them are duplicates now with the trunk, because the trunk has moved on. Yeah, and I actually did synchronize in August last year. And it was non-trivial actually to move from February to August, yeah, because there were a number of packages that, you know, were duplicates, but there were also packages that somehow were broken. So I had to revert on things. Yeah, so switching, you know, after half a year to a new, an updated Guix tree is non-trivial actually. You know, I'm not looking forward to the next one because it's going to cost me a day, maybe 2 days. It'll be possible, yeah, but it's something that it's work that you're never looking forward to. So another solution I put in is using shared profiles. So essentially what we do now is we have GNetwork, we fixated it, the Guix tree, we fixated the Guix package path with our own packages, and then we deploy it. Right? So we deployed in something called user local shared GN staging. So this is a staging branch, and then the version of the tree, right? So when we get to the next stage, if we want to move it to production, what I'll actually do is I'll mount the profile on the user local shared GN production with this particular version. Yeah, so this is how we move forward, and all the developers and you know, deployment people, they share the same structure. So we know exactly at any point in time what is actually in GNetwork 2.0 A8 FC FF4, yeah, based on the August checkout of Guix. So Guix channels could be an improvement, and that's what I'm going to touch on in a bit. So some discussion we have on the mailing list. Yeah. Guix channels do not exist at this point, right? But the idea is that we allow people to provide different versions of the Guix tree. Yeah. So for example, you know, if you have a product like GNetwork, and I want to tell somebody else, you know, please install this product at this version, I would provide him a channel essentially. I would tell him, you know, tell Guix to use this channel, and from that point onwards, you know, he'll be installing software from that particular version of the tree. Yeah, that's ideally what I want. And you could also roll backwards. You could say, okay, you know, you know, Ruby 1.8.7 is a very old Ruby and sometimes you need it, yeah, you could actually provide a channel for that. Say, okay, I'm going to provide a Ruby 1.8.7 channel that other people can use, right? Which is disconnected from the main Guix branch, main Guix trunk. Another thing that is a problem with, Guix package path at this point is disconnected because it actually doesn't look like the Guix tree itself. Right? So if you create a package in your own Guix package path and you want to migrate it into trunk, it's actually a bit of work. Yeah, and work is not good. Yeah, so if we had a channel that which is actually a reflection of the Guix tree, it would become much more trivial, to merge patches with the main trunk. So for now, I'm the one who is juggling branches. Yeah, because I cannot even explain to others how to do this stuff. They're not ready for it. So the second part of my talk is about installation, and I gave this also yesterday for the HPC group. We also have the problem that we are running on high performance computing systems and supercomputers. Yeah, so we want to run Guix packages there, and these guys and gals who manage these systems, they're highly resistant to giving you root. Yeah, they don't want to give you administrative privileges. Yeah, so and Guix itself, requires a Guix daemon to install stuff. So that's to start that you need administrative privileges. It's a no-go in many HPC environments. There's a few exceptions now, but it's a rule there has got one. But it's rare. It'll come over time. The administrators will start to realize that we actually are saving them time, and they get better environments. But anyway, so the alternative is, people to circumvent this question in HPC environments. What they start to do is use stuff like Brew, Conda, Easy Build, which actually are built environments that work under a local user account. The downside of these systems, these build systems, is that they're non-reproducible. Well, they're reproducible as long as you're using the same home directory that you're in, building stuff in. But also, it's hard to share. It's hard to share these build tools. And you need to build from scratch every time, which is a lot of work. You need to bootstrap. Yeah. Docker and container solutions in HPC environments are not an option. Yeah, there are actually HPC environments that are trying to provide them now. But even Docker needs administrative privileges, and people are always worried, that their systems are going to get screwed. So something I wrote in the last couple of months is called Relocatable Guix, and it was based on an insight which I had with Eelco Dolstra a few years back at FOSDEM, and Eelco was here a few hours ago, but he left. He's the inventor of Nix. Yeah, and Guix was forked from Nix, so there are many shared similarities. And one of them is that we have a path /GNU/store, and then we have a hash value, glibc version, and then, for example, the name of the file. Right, and the key insight is that this is, if you look into files, this is quite recognizable, right? This hash value is unique. So what about just patching these files with something new? If you look at LDC2, which is a decompiler, yeah, and you look at the shared libraries that it uses, you can see this pattern of hash values, right? All fingerprints. Yeah, some of them are shared, so the glibc ones are shared. Ooh. Sorry. So how about relocating those? Yeah, so replace them with something is a target prefix. So if you have a home directory /home/user, yeah, we're gonna replace them, and it will look like this, right? Well, in this case, I install it in the home directory opt LDC test, and then I've rewritten the hash value to look like this, and these are the files. So after installation of this LDC2, it's actually sitting in a home directory in /opt. And will this resolve? And the answer is yes. It will just work. Yeah, so just to reiterate, yeah, we are replacing that value with that value. And me see. Looks like I'm skipping something. Anyway. Now I did this as an experiment, and I used Ilko also created a tool called Patch Elf, which actually allows you to rewrite ELF files, and it worked. And for textual files like Ruby, Perl, and Bash scripts that have these same fingerprints, it also works to replace them. But some formats like compiled Python files and JVM files, it turned out to be a little less easy. Mostly because they're not zero-terminated strings. They're actually strings that have a length indicator in front of them. So one night I came up with a solution and said, why don't I keep the size of this path exactly the same, so I don't have to worry about what it actually looks like inside the file, whether it's serial-terminated or has some other length indicator. So that was the second insight. So if you see these two paths, now they have the exact same length. I just patched it in, you just slam them in, and it works. It's definitely the easy way to go. Yeah? So I replaced it in all files. There are some URLs on here where all these projects are, so you can visit them at leisure if you want. Yeah, so this is the idea. In this case I have home user opt in the first one, so I slam it in. In the second case I tell it to install and user local share LDC 1.01. And you can see it says this exact same length, and what I do is actually I cannibalize the hash value. Yeah, so it becomes shorter in the second case because the prefix is longer. Yeah, you can cannibalize a long way. I can cannibalize all the way back to it doesn't exist anymore, and then I can go a bit further too. And if you add it all up, you have about 40 letters you can use as a prefix. You have to come up with these unique paths. And cannibalizing the hash value is not that important in this case, because in Guix we use it to isolate, all these directories. But in this case, I tell it to install it somewhere unique. Yeah, so I'm telling it to install it in this folder, or in the LDC test folder over there. Yeah, so what it in the end looks like internally doesn't matter because we're not sharing. Yeah. Okay, so for the LDC compiler, there's an example. You can actually download this. It's online. It's a 40 megabyte download. You unpack it. It's about 140 megabytes. Installation of the binary takes 3 seconds on my laptop. So this is very different from these easy build ideas, or even Docker installations. This is very lightweight. Yeah, the only thing I'm doing is replacing all the paths. And there's many people who've tested this now for the decompiler, so yeah, they're happy. And also, yeah, there's two other things that are important. One is that the shared library, that actually, this package, I can call it a package now, contains the shared libraries all the way down to glibc, and even the Linux loader is in there. Yeah, so with many systems, you have this problem that if you deploy binaries somewhere else, yeah, you will get conflicts, for example, because they want to load the underlying distributions glibc or libc, yeah, or LZ4 library or whatever. And there can be problems. There can be mismatches. So you see a lot of internet forums. They discuss these problems about libraries not working, and that's the reason. Got 10 more minutes. So I also did the same thing with Ruby, SSL, and Nokogiri. Well, Nokogiri is infamous for installation. Yeah, because it's a Ruby gem that depends on libxml2. And it's, the internet is just, I think half of the internet is filled with messages about people having problem installing Nokogiri. It just works. And Sambamba is a tool we developed. It's written in D, and it's used in many high sequencing high performance computer centers around the world. And there was a very hard to reproduce bug. It segfolds occasionally, right? In some conditions, on some environments, but it's never reproduced. But we can see it pop up once in a while. So I created a binary distribution. It was deployed on a cluster in Australia. They ran it for a day. They saw some of these segfolds. They ran the GDB debugger against it, and we found the exact location where the segfold happened, and we fixed it. And it's actually not in Sambamba, but it's upstream. Yeah, so I'm actually doing remote debugging. Somebody else is running it. and I'm helping with the debugging. And we're doing more. We're gonna add more. So the potential here is also that we can actually create one-click installs, for binary packages. And it's something I want to discuss also in the future of Guix. There are security concerns, of course. When you create a binary that's downloadable from the web and you just install it, with your eyes closed. We need to work on that somehow. But I think it is really cool that we can actually use a Guix package that is well tested and has been, possibly being used by already 100,000 people, and we just deploy it by rewriting the internal paths. So the third part of this talk, and I hardly have time left, so that's going to be really short, is about workflows. We have a need for running tools in order, sequentially and in parallel on these high performance computing systems, and essentially it's called a workflow. And there's been many standards that have been developed for workflows. At the moment there's a project going on, it's called the Common Workflow Language, and it has a lot of momentum in our community. And it started nice, it started really as a good idea because it says, it started as a descriptive document of the workflow. But soon they embedded JavaScript because they wanted to do more. They wanted to avoid repetition. And they also have looping now. So deterministic it no longer is. And when you look at these workflow standards, occasionally someone will pop up and create a new standard like this one, and it turns out it's actually quite hard to do. Because people want to put in the kitchen sink. That's what really the problem is. Sorry. So Guix essentially is already a workflow engine, right? I mean, we can handle dependencies, which is serial execution. And we can also handle parallel execution in a way because of the build farm, the way the build farm has been designed. So Roel is going to talk about workflows at 3:30 in this room. And he's been doing a lot of work in this area. I'm not saying that build farms are a great idea, but he's probably doing something else. And the fourth part of the talk is orchestration. So making the rounds, visiting companies and academic institutions. This is something that pops up every time. People are using tools like Puppet and Chef and likewise. And Ludo described services, which are services running inside a computer. But we also have services that run out across computers now, right? So we have systems that depend on each other, and this is called orchestration. One service may need another service to run. How do you set up the order of these? And when one service goes down, what do the other services do, right? So this is called orchestration, and I think with the functional paradigm that we have with Guix, we can actually push forward to make things happen here too. So that's maybe something for the final discussion today, which is about the future of Guix. Conclusion. Guix allows for controlled and sane software deployment with profiles and Git, the way I'm doing it, and we should have channels to make it easier for me. Guix has relocatable binary packages now, and we should continue experimenting with that and see how far it gets us. Guix will handle workflows, I have no doubt, because Roel is working hard on it, and orchestration should be on the agenda. That's my conclusion. And I have acknowledgements for people who are working, so Roel, Ludo, and Ricardo especially. The GNU Guix communities, which one of the things that really strikes me with Guix is that it, and Guile, is that it attracts so many really intelligent people. So I'm really happy you're here. And then I want to thank Professor Robert Williams, who's paying my bills. Thank you. So Chris, you can set up.
Sure. All right.
Have we got any questions? Yes? Yes.
I'm curious, right? Somebody will ask you
The source code of what?
of what of the snapshots of
I missed the last bit only.
if you are not afraid that somebody will ask you for source code,
Yeah.
what will you provide?
No. So the question is, should I be afraid about the source code that if somebody asks for it, and it's all online. I only do open source software.
Well, but you have special packages in Guix package path.
Okay.
Your own snapshots, you have your own processing things.
Yeah. So we do have Guix package path, but it's also online. It's out in the open. Yeah. So I'm highly resistant to using any type of proprietary software. Yeah, but also our own systems are completely in the open. It's all open source software. So the Guix package path is just a construct where you can import a second Git tree into the packaging tree, right? But this second packaging tree is just, I need it because it's not on the main tree. But it is out in the open, anyone can use it, anyone can update it.
And another question, how do you save the package, previous package version?
Sorry, I missed the last bit again.
How do you save a previous package version? You just copy and paste a piece of text, or?
Yes. So how do we handle the versioning? Yeah. So yeah, you have to explicitly for every package say, okay, this is the version I want to use, right? Or the Git checkout or whatever, and that's you describe in the package.
Okay.
Have a look at the links that are in my talk, because it's all there. Yes?
What's the workflow for packaging like Python packages? Like Guix packages for those dependencies, or like handle a virtual environment?
Okay, so yeah, the question is how do we handle Python packages in Guix? There's really three ways to do this, to go about this. The best way is to actually write Guix packages for Python modules, which describe their dependencies also. And you install the package with Guix, and it pulls it in with the dependencies. To make it easy, we also provide a generator, so you can if for example if a package is already in pip, or PyPy or whatever they're called. It can pull that information and then create the package for you automatically in Guix. Yeah, and for this I use the Guix package path now, for example. But you're not completely delivered to Guix, because you can also Guix actually has a package called Python Virtual Environment, so you can start up a virtual environment for Python and use Python from there, and so you can just use pip and PyPy to pull in packages. And the third option is just to use a source tree and to provide that as in the Python path. And so Guix does not force you to work in any way. You can gradually, incrementally work towards the perfect solution. So
I should probably put on that microphone thing, huh?
yeah, we also have 2 minutes left.
Oh, yes, sorry. I'm not trying to steal it from you.
It's all right.